This is going to be my beginner's tutorial for Roblox Studio. I've been using Roblox Studio for 4 years now, and I feel like I have learned quite a bit, so I wanted to share what I've learned with you. I by no means know everything there is to know. I'm still learning constantly, but I do feel like I know enough to make generally most kind of games that you would want to make. So with that in mind, this is going to be the first tutorial where I'm going to cover just the very basics of what to expect when you open Roblox Studio. So starting out here, it should look something like this when you open it. And so here you'll see your experiences you made, but obviously if it's your first time opening it, there won't be anything there. And then if we scroll down, here you can open a template. So what a template is it's a basic kind of project that the developers have made for you. So it can be useful to open a template if you want to see different things of kind of what a game should look like or how things should function. So that can be useful for that. But generally, I like to start with just a base plate here, just an empty base plate for myself, and for the sake of teaching, I will be starting with that. So it's kind of up to you if you want to open a template or if you just want to start with a base plate. I would recommend possibly both if you have the option to. Perhaps just open the base plate first, and then eventually it could be a good idea to look at some of the different templates to see how things work and interact with each other. And then here's just some links down here to different documentation. And basically the same thing over here. So this will just take you to all of the templates that are available. And then here you can view games you've archived. Here you can view your active experiences. And then here's the home tab again. And then there's this start learning button here as well. I'm guessing it'll just take you to the wiki or some documentation. But if you're watching my tutorial series, then hopefully you won't need it too much anyway. But with all that said, let's go ahead and start a new experience here. So that's just basically the same as picking the base plate template. So if I just go ahead and close this, and then I open the template base plate here, it's the same thing. Okay, then, so starting out here, there's a lot of different stuff to cover. I'll go ahead and just cover the toolbox first. So the toolbox is where you can get a lot of different assets from other players and creators. So you can get plugins, models, audio, decals, mesh parts, videos, and fonts. So if you're just looking for some assets to use in your game and you don't want to make your own, then you can get a lot of them here. And as far as I know, you can use these assets in paid experiences. So there's no concern with that. However, some of the assets do cost money, so you might have to pay for some of them, but most of them are free. Now I'll be going over the services here. So I'll just go to the Properties tab here. And if you don't know how to open the Properties or the Explore tab, it's just in the View tab here, and then you can open them just like this. So I'll be going over the Explore tab first. this is where everything in your game is going to be stored, basically, with all these various services here. So these are all services here. I don't know the exact definition of what a service is in terms of Roblox Studio, but it basically is just it's a service, really. It gives you some kind of service to develop your game. So here you can add more services. So some of these are hidden. If you just want to view them, then you can go like that. Here you can hide the service. So if I hide it like that, and then I want to bring it back, I just go like that. So starting out with the first service, the workspace here, this is where all of your physical objects in the game are going to be. So everything that the player can see and interact with is going to be in the workspace here. So if I just play the game right now, and I open up the workspace, you can see I'm now in the workspace. The spawn location is in the workspace. I can delete it if I want to, and then it's not there anymore. I can delete the base plate, and then that's not there anymore. So that's what the workspace is. And I'll try and go over most of the settings here as well. Well, maybe not most of them, but I'll go over the most important ones. So the fallen parts destroy height. This is after a certain amount of distance. If a part just keeps falling, it'll be destroyed eventually. So you can generally just leave this how it is, but if you want to change it, then that's how you change it. The gravity here. So if you want the gravity to be higher or lower, it's pretty self-explanatory, but very important. And the rest of the stuff I wouldn't even mess with. I'm not even sure what most of it does. Here's the player's service. So any player that joins the game, you can see if I join the game here, I'll be in here as well. So I'll be in the workspace. My character will be in the workspace, but my player will be here. So that should make sense, hopefully. And then there's some settings in here. So the respawn time, if I want, I can change this. If I change it really high, then when the player dies, it's going to take a very long time for them to respawn. I'll just leave that at 3 for now. Banning enabled, so if you want to be able to ban players, then just enable it. Otherwise, you just wouldn't be able to ban anybody, I guess. Character auto loads. So if that's disabled, then the character will not load in by default when they join the game. You'll just have to load them in through a script. Lighten, this is where you can control sort of the lighten of the world. So there's different kinds of lighten. For example, I can add a light into the workspace here. If I just want to add it into this spawn location for whatever reason, I can add a point light or all these different kinds of lights. So that would be lighten on like a smaller scale, but then here you can change kind of the global lighten. So I won't be going over all this. I would just make a separate video on this because it's quite detailed, the amount of stuff you can do with the lighten. The material service. So this is just if you want to change how the default materials look, you can add in custom materials here. Replicated first. So this is stuff that will be replicated to the player before anything else is replicated. So the only time I've ever used this is to make a load-in screen, because obviously for a load-in screen you want that to show up right away. You don't want there to be any delay. So that's a use case for that, but other than that, I haven't really needed to use replicated first. You can also use it for kind of the same thing, like if you want to preload some of the stuff, like some of the assets you want to preload them in. Because like the GUI, for example, will load as it's needed. So if you want to just load it all right away and get it out of the way, then that would be how you do that. Replicated storage. So this is where you're going to be storing all kinds of different assets that either the player will need or the server will need. So for example, if the player had a gun and you wanted to make a bullet, you would store the bullet in the replicated storage, and then you would clone it to the gun, and that's how you would get your bullet each time. So you can store stuff for the server or the player. It doesn't really matter. You can store pretty much anything you want here. And you can see, even though some of these things are grayed out, it doesn't really matter. I've never had a problem storing anything in here. Even though the decal is grayed out, I can store it in here, and I can use it if I want. And then server script service. This is where all your server scripts are going to go. So there's 3 different kinds of scripts. There's a normal script, which will run on the server. There's a module script, which is a more advanced kind of script that can either run for the player or just for the whole server, depending on what you need. And then lastly, there's a local script, which will only run for the player. I'll be going over scripting more later. It's a very big topic, so and then server storage. Here you can store different things that the game may need. So it's kind of like the replicated storage, but the difference is that the server storage, only the server can access the server storage. So the player will never be able to access this. But yeah, you can also put a bullet here, for example, just like you could with the replicated storage, and then clone it. It just depends if the player needs to be able to access or not. But generally, I like using the replicated storage over the server storage. And the server storage, I'll just kind of put things that I want to use as a developer, but the game doesn't need. So, for example, I could put this car here. Say I don't want this car to be cloned. I want to be able to choose where I want to put it. So let's say I want a car here, and then maybe I want one here. Well, I don't need any more cars for right now. So what I can do is I can copy the car, and I could put it in the server storage. That way, if I ever need one, then I'll have it. Like, for example, say I change this car and I make it blue or something, or I change how it works. This way, I still have the original car here. So if I ever want it, I can just copy it, and I could bring it back on the workspace for me to use. The starter GUI. This is where all your GUI will go. So like your health bar and things like that, that's where this will go. And this is also a very big topic, so I'll be making an entire tutorial series on this, hopefully. Starter pack. This is where anything you want the player to start with. Well, more specifically, the character to start with. So just to keep that distinction in mind. So when the character dies, they will start with a brand new pack here. So just whatever you put in here. I mean, I could even put the car in here, but that wouldn't really make much sense. But I'm actually curious. I'm going to go and try it. Yeah, so I don't think anything would happen. But if I go here, you can see in my backpack I have a car. So if I wanted to do that for whatever reason, I could do that. You can also put scripts in here or a lot of different things. Starter player. So this is where there's a few things you can do with the starter player. You can make a custom model for your player. Okay, this one I don't think would work because it has to have all the right parts. But this one, we could use this. So if I just put this in here and then name it starter character, and it has to be spelled exactly like this, then when I play the game, I will now look like this. So that's something you can do with the starter player. There's also a bunch of properties here I'll go over in a bit. Starter character scripts. Here you can add local script or a normal script, which will be duplicated each time. So you get a fresh script each time the player dies. Starter player scripts. This is just only for local scripts, and this will be when the player joins the game. Teams. So this handles creating teams. Sound service. There's a few different sound settings you can adjust here. And text chat service just for the chat in the game. So you can see most of these services, you wouldn't really want to change anything, but some of them have things you would want to change, like the workspace, for example. There's some different properties here you might actually want to change. And yeah, starter player is also huge. So here you can change the health display distance. So if you use the default health bar, and then here you can change the camera options, the starter character walk speed, the jump power, a few different things like this. Okay, so that pretty much covers everything in the Explorer. So now let's look at the various tabs up here. So here you can select and manipulate parts like this. I can move the part if I want, or I can make it bigger or smaller. I'll be going over parts more in the next tutorial. So if you don't fully understand, that's okay. And then here you can open the terrain editor. Again, that's going to be a separate tutorial. Here you can open the toolbox. Here you can add new parts, add UI elements, pick different colors and materials for your parts. So if I want to make this green, or if I want to make it orange. Here you can anchor things and lock things. I'll go over that more in the next tutorial. Here, where you play the game, so test it. And here, if you pick play, it'll spawn you at the spawn location. If you don't have a spawn location, it'll spawn you in the middle of the room, or the world, I should say. So the middle of the world is going to be 0, 0, 0, which is right where this is at anyway. Okay, let's see, where was I? Oh yeah, okay, so I was right here. So if you don't want to spawn in the middle, like let's say I'm doing something over here and I want to spawn right here, then I can just pick play here and it'll just spawn me in right here. And then run will just run the game without any players. And then this, okay, I need to actually run the game to show you this. So here you can see I'm on the client. So that would be everything that this player would see would be in this mode. But then if I change it to the server, I can view the game from how the server sees it. And that's how your local scripts and your server scripts are going to come into play. Whereas if you want something to just only apply to that player, you'd use a local script. Or if you want it to apply to the whole server, then you'd use a server script. Okay, now the game settings. So you can't view this unless you publish this place, which I don't really want to do right now because I don't really want to publish this, but there's not too many options here. It's just pretty basic stuff. And then in the model tab, most of the stuff I'm not going to be covering now because it's just all related to parts and models, so I'll go over that in the next tutorial. The avatar tab, here's just stuff to do with your character or your avatar. The test tab, so this is if you want to test the game. Usually you only want to do this if you want to do a multiplayer test. Otherwise you can just test it right here. The view tab, here you can hide or view all the different windows, like the Explorer or the properties. And then if I want to drag a window, I can just drag it like that. And then if I close it and I want to open it back up, see now it opens right here. But if I want to bring it back here, I just drag it like that. The asset manager, this is where you can view assets that you've uploaded. Toolbox, we've already been over that. The object browser, so this is where you can view all the different objects that Roblox Studio uses. Like for example, here's a part object. So I can see all the different properties of the part. But you can also just find all this information on the wiki. So I would recommend using the Roblox developer wiki over this because it gives more useful information. Here you can view the output. So if you have any errors like we did here with this script and this car, then this is where you'd find out. Command bars, so here you can run different commands. I've actually already made a tutorial video on this, but maybe I'll make another one at some point. Performance task scheduler. I never use any of this stuff, so I'm not 100% sure what it does, but I wouldn't worry about it right now. Team create. So this is if you want to make a game with somebody else. This way you can both work on the game at the same time. Terrain editor. This is for making terrain like hills and mountains. And then here you can change the wind. Here you can go full screen or take a screenshot. Things like that. Here you can view all of your plugins. You can manage your plugins here if you want to disable them or uninstall them. That's where you would do that. Plugins folder, that'll just open your local plugins folder. Okay, then lastly, I'm just going to go over the options here. So here you can make a new game. That'll just open up the blank base plate here if you pick this. Open from file. So if you have the file saved locally on your computer, you can open it up from here. Open from Roblox, so if you've saved the game or published it to Roblox, then that's where you'd open it here. Close place. So if you close it, it'll just go back to the Roblox menu. It'll ask you if you want to save the file or not, and then it'll go back to the main menu. Save the file. So this is if you want to save it locally on your computer. But keep in mind, once you save it to Roblox, you won't have this option to save it to a file anymore. The only way I found to get a file once you've already published it is with the auto recovery file, which you can see down here. It has created a auto recovery file for me. So I would have to open that up or just find where that auto recovery file is, and then that would basically be the file. That would basically be the local file if I wanted that. Advanced. So here you can open your autosaves, so that would be your auto recovery files. As you can see here, that's the auto recovery file it made. Export as OBJ. I'm not 100% sure what that does, but I'm guessing just exports either a part or object as a object model. So like if you want to open it up in Blender or some 3D software, customize shortcuts. This is pretty useful if you want to just customize your shortcuts to make them just easier to use. Manage plugins. And then here's your game settings, which again you can't go over unless you publish the game. Studio settings. So this is all your various settings related to Roblox Studio. It's mostly just personal preference, so just adjust it as you see necessary. Beta features. This is probably exactly what it sounds like if you just want to see what kind of beta features there are. Online help, so this will open up the Roblox wiki. And then about Roblox Studio, just information related to Roblox Studio. Like what kind of version it is and things like that. So if you look here at the wiki, here's where I would recommend going. If you want to learn more, you can find all different kinds of things related to pretty much anything in Roblox Studio. Like if I just want to learn more about a part, I can search in here and find it. So I can find all the different properties and things like that. Things that I can do with a part. Alright, so that pretty much covers the first tutorial here. I know it's probably kind of boring, just going over the very basic stuff, but it's quite useful and important to learn the basics first before you try and move on to more advanced things. But yeah, in the next tutorial I'll be going over parts. But yeah, that's it for this tutorial.